The virtual CISO moment is brought to you by vCISO Services, a leading provider of quality and experienced virtual chief information security officers for small and mid-sized businesses. Check them out at vcisoservices.com. Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the virtual CISO moment. We are at Montreat College at the Retreat Cybersecurity Conference, and we're here with Rob Bowker. He is with Dmarc. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, okay, you're with Dmarc. How did you let us know, if you won't mind, what you do there, what Dmarc is, but also your path on how you got there.
Sure, that's a long one. So I've been in the world of email for quite some time, going back to my days at SunTrust Bank, managing BlackBerry servers and Exchange servers and Good servers.
Oh, and that brings back memories.
Yeah, lots of email, and eventually found my way into discovering Dmarc, which was a move for me into cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. Dmarc, DMARC, is the technology we're talking about today.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Ed Carroll, actually here at Montreat, representing the Cyber Center, introduced me to the technology, and I just it very much pertains to email security, and that's how I got involved and been specifically in the world of Dmarc and email security now for, close to 4 years. Wow.
So, is this being in email security, is that something that you thought about as like a kid in high school? Like this was your dream job?
Not necessarily high school. I think when I was at SunTrust Bank learning SMTP and email, I saw how simple it was to open a relay and open a port 25 connection and send an email and state what your from address was and who you were sending to, and you could basically you could write in there whoever you wanted to be on a from address.
Yeah,
and it's pretty scary.
You could be on like a Linux console and telnet in on port 25 and put in all of those. I don't remember the exact parameters, but yes, you could put in the from field, the to field, and basically manually build your own email.
Exactly.
And that's really what the first email programs. One of the earliest ones was Elm and Pine on Linux and
MS Mail.
but that's really all that they were, is that they were a front end for basically doing that sort of connection with SMTP servers.
Yeah.
And we all know, of course, that port 25 is SMTP. Yeah. So,
and to this day is still, email still uses port 25 and it's still wide open.
Absolutely.
To this day.
So, I'm sure you deal with a lot of businesses of all different sizes. Mm-hmm. I always like to look, though, at small and mid-sized businesses because they sometimes have unique challenges. What would be a significant threat to them right now? Or would you say that maybe just around email security in general?
Clearly phishing. So most of the reports show that a very large percentage of the successful cyber attacks start with a phishing attempt.
Right.
SANS Institute, IBM have showed reports of 85 to 90% of the successful attacks start with phishing. And remember that phishing isn't necessarily inbound to an organization. Those phishing emails are pretending to be your domain. If you're a business owner, it's a message that's sent out pretending to be from you.
Right.
It could be to your customer, it could be to your business partner, your bank. So phishing is a very broad stroke.
And we used to say that, so they're phishing, a lot of times they're phishing for credentials. So you put in your username and password, and it's a bogus website, for example, and then the bad guys get your username and password. Well, if you only use MFA, then everything's fine. But now we're seeing what they call Mfa Fatigue, where they basically keep pounding you and pounding you and pounding you with requests until you just take your Duo thing and say, or whomever. I'm not busting on Duo. It's the first one that came to my mind, that it's so simplified. They made it very simple as a yes or a no, and you just hit yes, but now you just let the bad guy in and you don't know about it. So there has to be more emphasis on other aspects of email security, and this is where I wanted to talk a little bit more about Dmarc, the technology.
Sure. And sometimes those attacks are asking to log into systems. Other times it's, hey, real quick, change the banking credentials, or let's say it's the bank account number that you're going to deposit that money in today.
Yeah, the business email compromise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or even just from an email from a CEO or something saying,
exactly.
Hey,
Yeah. But Dmarc itself, it's domain-based messaging, authentication, reporting, and compliance. And that'll be the only time I go into all of that. That's why we call it Dmarc. It is a DNS record, just like you have DNS records that stipulate what your website IP address is or what the mail server is that handles your email. Dmarc is a very simple text record that instructs mail handlers globally on how you want reporting and what action to take on email that meets a certain criteria. And it's an open standard, so this is something that takes what Easy Dmarc does is help you manage Dmarc. It helps you get all those reports, which are very verbose. It helps you see those reports and take action on those reports and figure out, okay, I've got good email here being delivered by my services such as like QuickBooks or my Salesforce or HubSpot. I want those messages delivered to the inbox. It's very business critical messages. But the ones that don't follow that criteria and are suspect, I want the mail handlers to reject those messages. I don't want those delivered, whether it be spam or just rejected outright. I want to be able to have the ability to use Dmarc to instruct mail handlers on how to deal with that email.
So how does this differ from just like a spam filter?
Well, a spam filter is a very, very critical part of an email security posture, and that's inbound. I think when most people think email security, they immediately think about inbound mail to the organization. And the simple way to look at it is Dmarc is outbound. All the messages that are sent, into the internet by other sources. And so Dmarc affects all your domain, who's sending from your domain, and preventing those from trying to send from your domain. So it's not necessarily inbound spam prevention; it's what's being sent out.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're looking at a different threat, so to speak. Now, I have to admit that I have researched. I've looked into Dmarc. I'm not a DNS administrator anymore, but I found it on the surface, looking at the standard and all of that, difficult to understand and comprehend how to implement it and how to manage it. I'm assuming, because I always like companies that name themselves descriptively. Like my firm, VCSO Services. What do? We provide VCSO services. So Easy Dmarc, you make that implementation and that management easier?
I would certainly like to say that.
I mean, I didn't mean that to be a softball question, but,
Yeah.
but I'm genuinely interested, because that seems to be what small and mid-sized businesses, with me as a consultant, saying, well, you need to get Dmarc in. Well, they're like, well, okay, but we don't really know how to do it. It's like...
Right. Many people find us after reading about Dmarc and discovering that it's a technology that you can adopt. Sometimes companies actually set a Dmarc record and very quickly realize that the reporting aspect of Dmarc is very verbose, and it's really hard to digest the reports that are produced. Reports are produced in XML markup language, so it's very hard to read. And so we are, first and foremost, we're a Dmarc aggregator. So we accept all those reports, hundreds and thousands of days for some organizations, and we present them visually, so you don't have to sit there and read and comb through the XML. Many times, and we should really talk about managed service providers too, as we talk about small to medium-sized businesses, because many SMBs are served by their MSP.
Right.
And so a lot of times MSPs come to us and say, my customer was subject of a phishing attack. I've read about Dmarc, and I need help in getting this in place. And even from the very get-go, you talked about DNS records. From the very beginning, when you come to us and you set up a free trial, the first thing we do is we show you your Dmarc DNS text record. All you have to do is copy and paste that into DNS. We show you exactly where to go and to put that.
But then it's a question that, like, putting the text record in is relatively trivial. I mean, but actually knowing what to do with what the outputs are, that's what the secret sauce is.
Yes, and the free account and several tiers of our subscriptions are guidance. So we present the information to you visually so that you can take action, so that it presents itself to the point where, if I see red and fail, I know there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's kind of a report card type of format too, to show key technologies such as SPF and DKIM, which are critical to to email security, it shows the status of those. So if if you manage email and you have access to DNS records, then you will see those, the status of those, and know how to act on them.
So some of our listeners are small and mid-sized business owners, or they are not technical, and I think that they sometimes get overwhelmed with acronyms. Can you just quickly explain? We've already talked a lot about what Dmarc does, but SPF and DKIM, how those records kind of play into the whole ecosystem.
Sure. So SPF and DKIM were developed probably around 2005, 2006, and the concept of those were authenticate against my domain, and I'm going to give you ability to authenticate against my domain to send email on my behalf. So I gave examples earlier. Think about your CRM systems, conference booking, maybe your order confirmations, QuickBooks, accounting. All those services are sending on your behalf.
Right.
Even when you go to a website and say contact me, GoDaddy or your website host is sending that message out. They're using your domain name, and so SPF and DKIM were abilities to give that person to send on your behalf. This is called spoofing. So a lot of times people think spoofing's bad, but spoofing is simply sending an email as somebody else. And so what Dmarc did, SPF and DKIM were great technologies, and Dmarc really validates that by saying, well, SPF and DKIM are very important. What we're going to do is add the reporting aspect. So we're going to flip on these reports that show you where things worked against SPF and DKIM. And after that, then it gives you the ability to essentially create that Dmarc authentication. So did it pass SPF? Did it pass DKIM? And I can instruct the mail handlers of the world, the O365s, the Googles, the Yahoos, the Verizons. I'm going to instruct them, if it didn't meet SPF, if it didn't meet DKIM, then take this action. And you essentially instruct them what to do if it failed.
So really, it isn't as if Dmarc replaces SPF and DKIM.
No.
Proper email security, you should have all three in place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Dmarc is very much dependent on both SPF and DKIM. Yeah.
Okay, and I will be the first to admit, because I don't know everything, and sometimes I forget stuff. I'm old, but I wasn't so sure about that myself, because it is very confusing. And to your point back in the beginning, there is so much threat involved with phishing and other fraudulent emails that we're always rushed. We're always like wanting to get through business, and I know just the volume of email I get. Sometimes it's very hard to like stop and think. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Does that make sense? Well,
it's not visible, right?
No.
Sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is very, very accurate, right? Because you could be running an organization, you could be in a cybersecurity role, you could be an email guy, and you don't really have any view into who is using your domain if you don't have Dmarc. Right. So if I stopped you and said, did we get phished last night? Well, you really don't know, because you don't have the reporting turned on. So with Dmarc, you flip a switch and you get the reporting, and you can see, oh, someone in Thailand, oh, look, someone in Brazil actually tried to send email using my domain.
And you can use that information in a proactive sense, maybe to let your folks know that something might be coming in, or hopefully Dmarc's stopping it.
Well, the proactive part of Dmarc is advancing to that enforcement. There's three benefits of Dmarc, and those three benefits are essentially phases. The first benefit is the visibility, the reporting.
Right.
That's a really fun stage, because you're not impacting email in any way, shape, or form, but you're establishing that DNS record, and boom, you're turning the lights on. You can see everything and everyone that's sending on your behalf, but it doesn't impact email. The next stage is increasing your deliverability. So once you start saying, okay, I want QuickBooks and I want HubSpot working better, I can see my rates of deliverability, and I want to improve those by putting SPF and DKIM in place. So your deliverability to the inbox increases. And then you advance to the enforcement, the quarantine, or the reject stages, we call them, where you say, I've done all this work. I know who all the good people are that are sending email on my behalf. Anyone else, I want you to reject them. I want you to not allow that message.
So you almost reduce your threat exposure down to the domains that you are explicitly allowing, and you could still get a spam or a phish from there if they happen to be compromised. So it's not 100% taking care of it, but boy, you're getting pretty close.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and that's a really good point. This is not a foolproof, hey, your email security profile is complete with Dmarc. This is just one part of a really robust email security.
Yeah.
And Dmarc's an open standard.
And that's where you never like to hear in any instance where it's just like you put in this little black box and it's like, hey, you're completely secure. That never exists. Layered security and understanding your layered security controls is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot going on there, and cybersecurity can be pretty stressful sometimes, depending upon, what you do and the deadlines you have and all of that. What do you do to decompress?
I got to admit, there's some stressful moments with cybersecurity. That's very true. We've been on calls with banks or even nonprofits that are getting attacked, and showing them that someone was successful sending messages out on their behalf. For me, after perhaps a day of a train of Zoom sessions and meeting with customers, my first steps are to really turn off Slack, instant messaging. Thank goodness for Apple's different modes where you can put on Do Not Disturb. I definitely got to turn off email.
Yes, I do that. I have Do Not Disturb on, that's a wonderful thing that they have.
Yeah, but all that removes the immediacy of having to respond to customers or having to respond to someone internally that's needing something really fast, and just being able to go, okay, let me just pause and take a breath. And I think for me, my work environment has a lot to do with being able to de-stress. And once I've turned off the immediacy aspects, my daughter's got me into vinyl, and so I'll put on a record and just
the old school.
Yeah.
You're gonna pick up some 8-tracks later on too?
No, I think there's something about just the process of opening the record and very delicately pulling out the album and placing it on there, making sure the needle doesn't scratch it. I think it forces you to kind of slow down, right? So instead of opening Spotify or telling my iPhone to play something, I guess that act of getting the record out and figuring out which song I want or which side of the album I want, put it down, and that's really helped.
Yeah, I think that in some ways, once music went digital, it killed the whole concept of the album.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't as much into vinyl as I was into cassettes, but still, old technology. But you would play the album in the order in which it's presented to you. And so even to this day, I'll be listening to an old Billy Joel song. When one ends, I'm already starting to hear the next one in my mind, what would be the next track on the album. And people don't get that anymore today.
Yeah, and the artwork.
And the artwork,
right,
yeah, and the album artwork. You can never replicate that on a little cassette thing, but album artwork was just absolutely fabulous. The liner notes, you used to, and sometimes they would have the lyrics there. Because sometimes it's like some folks, they'd sing. It's just like, what did you just say, Bob Dylan? It's like, and then the whole analog experience of it, because it's not digital, it's pure, it's analog. You're taking the actual sound waves and reproducing it in an analog way, and there is just something different.
Yeah.
Although I got to admit that with my albums, I was never too careful about where I dropped it down or this or that or whatever else. Future plans. What's going on in the future for you?
For work or personal?
Either, I guess.
Well, we're it's pretty exciting times at Easy Dmarc. We recently had KnowBe4 is a publicly traded $1 billion cybersecurity company here in the U.S. Invest in us, and it's really helping to gain awareness. A lot of people are just learning about Dmarc, and again, this is an open standard that still only has 50 to 60% global adoption.
Right.
And so that's helped us with both awareness and credibility to us as a provider. And we're growing our product to do some. Don't want to let too many secrets out of the bag, but we're definitely not. We're expanding beyond Dmarc. Let's put it that way, to help with email security, things like lookalike domains. That seems to be the next big.
Right.
Thing that we're focusing on, and Yeah, it's really exciting to see the growth and to see the founders of our company that are very eager to grow our product, and they love talking to customers and finding out what are those features that they need to grow our product. So it's exciting.
Well, that's an interesting tie-in with KnowBe4, because KnowBe4 is so well known. My firm VC Services, we're a KnowBe4 partner, and actually I started working with KnowBe4 when I was a bank CISO more than 10 years ago. So at that point,
Wow.
KnowBe4 was pretty slim. Personal plans, or as far as professional, like your growth, continue with Dmarc and continue investigating the email world?
Yeah, for me, work is a lot of my my personal growth. Right, is being part of a SaaS startup and helping to advise in other countries and how we're growing and how we're poised to grow. Personally, my wife and I just bought a new home just a few months ago, actually. So there is no shortage of work to be done because it's a fixer-upper, and so that's probably one of those also de-stress moments. Once I'm listening to a record and I'm finally chilled out, my wife's knocking on my office door saying, "Hey, are we ready to start the shiplap in the bathroom? Ready to paint?" So I do find that enjoyable, the home improvement stuff. So
Great. Well, Rob, really appreciate you joining us today. We'll do the fist bump.
There you go.
And best of luck with the fixer-upper.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Stay secure.